Okay, everybody, welcome to our brief presentation here on the LegalShield revolution. And my name's Rocco Cilio. I'm coming to you from New Jersey, and I have the good fortune of being a part of this company now for the past 7.5 years. I serve as the business and network vice president here in New Jersey, and I'm excited to be able to bring this information to you. Our company, LegalShield, has been in business now for well over 40 years. We're actually the largest legal entity in the United States, and we've done very well for ourselves over the years. Organic growth, word of mouth, one person telling another, grew this business model into a $500 million a year company that represents well over 4 million subscribers of our legal service plans and identity theft protection solutions products. So there is no secret that affordable access to the legal system is something that this country desperately needs. There is no secret that the problem of identity theft has grown exponentially and to the point where it's epidemic size. Every 2 seconds, somebody new is a victim. But the solution to those problems have finally been brought into the public's eye, and our company is the market leader in being able to be that solution. So that's really what we're here to talk about. But the way we're going to dive in here is just by giving you some information that we think is pretty valuable for you to have in the back of your mind and trying to decide if this might be a good financial opportunity for you or not. I do want to say this up front: 95% of the folks who get started with us are just looking for a way to be able to bring in a part-time revenue stream. And very often it can grow over time to a point where they can make it a full-time business and career. But that's really your choice to make. Our job here is to be able to make sure that you have enough information. And for us, the best thing that we can do is just kind of give you what we believe is the future of business. And when we look down the road and where we've come from and where we're heading in the world of business, there's some things that you really need to be keep your eye on to be able to determine whether or not a company is not only going to be successful in what we call the new economy, but really hyper successful. And it's been said that there are 4 characteristics that a business is going to need to have if they're going to be able to make it. And I think that it's nothing complicated. It's a pretty simple formula, but not every company is going to be able to make it. So let's talk about the future of business a little bit. And the first thing that we know for sure, if a business is not going to just survive, but actually thrive in this new economy, their business model has to be simple. Simple for the end user of a product or service, simple in the way the business is run. The more complicated, antiquated systems and companies in corporate America are falling by the wayside pretty quickly. And we'll talk about some of that, but I'll just start out by giving you a very quick idea of what we consider to be a simple company. How about the business called Uber? By now, you should be very familiar with Uber. They've basically crushed and demolished the taxi cab industry. And they've done so by simplifying an existing cumbersome process. And if you think about the formal model of using a taxi, we only used taxi cabs when we absolutely had to. The reality is that the process wasn't very simple. We had to call. We had to try and give somebody exact directions where we were at, hope that they would be there in time to get us and wouldn't miss us. And then we wind up getting in a situation where we're, haggling, going back and forth with the cab driver on what we're paying and what the rates are as that meter ticks. And so then along comes Uber and changes that whole entire system. Now just with a push of a button, we don't have to deal with the driver. It's all done right from the mobile app that's on our phone. And the GPS system that's built inside the app locates us no matter where we're at, and we can get a driver to us in a fraction of the amount of time. So that's what we talk about when we say simple. One of the other things that the companies of the future are going to need to have in order to be able to have that hyper successful growth that they're going to be looking for is the company has to be disruptive. And again, we won't spend too much time on this, but disruptive, we can look at Uber. They certainly were a disruptive company. We're going to show you some other disruptive companies here in a few minutes, but it's simplifying a process can make something disruptive, but also something that can be extremely disruptive when it comes to price and how to operate a business. Is it something that the model can be scalable and there's not a lot of roadblocks in the way from being able to grow a company? Is it coming in and changing an existing process that's certainly needed an improvement, right? So that's a big part of it. Now, number three, we say the companies of the future are going to have to have a noble cause. They're going to have to be here to leave it better than they found it. That has to be a part of their MO. And in the world that we live in today, where the age of transparency and social media will sniff out anybody that's an insincere player. Now, we believe, as we get into the LegalShield details here in a few minutes, that this is probably of the four characteristics that we're talking about here, this is probably one of our strongest. And by the way, a company can certainly survive if they only have one of the four characteristics, and they could probably do okay if they have two or three. But to really be able to have the long-standing growth and to be able to achieve the maximum market penetration, they're going to have to meet all four characteristics. And the last four is important. The last of the four is important, and that's the company can't be easily replicated. Somebody should not be able to walk in, copy your business model the next day, just change the colors or change the flavor, and the next day they've duplicated your business, because the industry will start taking each other apart. So those are really four characteristics that we wanted to share as we dive in here. But there's one bonus point that we want to talk about, and we're going to look at trends here. But a bonus point for companies of the future is that it's a must. They absolutely have to be able to take advantage of the mobile app-based economy, right? Just about every business is trying to find a way now to get themselves onto your smartphone through a mobile app. And that's something to pay attention to. Again, it's part of the growth curve where we are heading as an economy, and it's something that everybody is well aware of. So, as we look at trends here, and we're just going to talk about a few different companies that have set some trends, maybe some that are not good trends, some of that are fantastic trends. But here's what Steve Jobs had to say about when it comes to predicting trends. He said, "You can't connect the dots looking forward, but you can by looking back." So let's start by taking a look back, and let's look into the world of entertainment first. And we'll take a company by the name of Blockbuster. Blockbuster had a very nice run for a long period of time. And for those of us that can remember using Blockbuster, we would make sure that we got there early enough to be able to pick out the DVD that we wanted to take home, because we want to make sure nobody else had already got it. And we'd wait in line. We'd have to drive there. Sometimes if you live in a colder part of the country, that could be frustrating. But it was just more convenient than anything else that we had at that point, right? We're now able to be able to watch movies at our home and pretty much on demand after we got them. And now the other problems that came along with Blockbuster that didn't make it so simple, sometimes we'd bring that DVD home and it was scratched. And then we were kind of out of luck because we didn't know until we got back, got back home and popped it in. So that became a frustrating process. And Blockbuster had a chance to be able to capitalize on their monopoly on that industry, but they didn't. They didn't see what was happening with the future. And along came a tiny company called Netflix and changed the landscape. They came out with a very simple idea, right? We talked about that was extremely disruptive to an existing industry and crippled them, brought them to their knees and put them out of business. For those of you that are, and I don't know if anybody is not aware of Netflix, but everything is on demand digitally right on our phones, right on any device that we use. We can now subscribe disruptively cheaper. You can actually have Netflix with thousands of different videos, movies, TV shows, documentaries, all streaming on your mobile device for what it maybe used to cost to rent 2 or 3 Blockbuster DVDs. And by the way, there's no late charges with Netflix, right? So simple, disruptive, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so another example we want to share with you really quickly is the company Kodak. Around forever, controlled the camera and photo industry. Did not notice trends that were coming along in the age of digital photography, showed up, and surprise, Kodak was out of business. Now companies like Instagram have taken it a step further, and with the technology that is on our phone, instead of just having a digital camera, how about building a digital camera into our mobile device and then having a mobile app that will allow us to organize photo albums right on the spot that can be displayed to thousands of people through social media. That's much better than the old industry, the old guard that was there, and Kodak never saw it coming. We can go a step further and we can look into the music industry, right? Another entertainment industry that was basically destroyed because of trends of the future. We used to walk into these stores. We were limited on what we could purchase based on inventory. We usually had to buy an entire CD just to maybe only hear one song if you were interested in it. And then along comes digital music, iTunes, Pandora, you name it, all these other platforms that have come out and been able, now we can actually access this stuff for a fraction of the cost of what we used to. And it's much more simple for us to be able to get access to. So these are just some of the trends that are happening now. And then you kind of take a step further and we can look at the department and retail store industry and how they've been crushed by Amazon.com. I mean, just the look at the parking lot can give you anxiety, right? And then you get in there and there's checkout lines, there's aisles, there's bumping into people. It's just not convenient. It's not fast. But along comes Amazon.com, and now we can do our shopping right on our phones from the click of a button. So these are just some of the trends, again, that we just want to keep putting in front of you here for a few minutes to try and set the tone for where our company LegalShield is going. We already talked about Uber a little bit. Here's the old way of the yellow taxi cabs, and then they've now given way to Uber, who is just dominating the transportation industry, dominating them completely. So I want to transition here, as you see here, another slide that talks about the past. What about this industry, the legal industry? And this is something that represents not just the past. We have the question mark there because we feel like it also represents for the vast majority of people the present as well. You see, when it comes to the legal system, only those that are able to afford it have been able to access it. And it's left many of us thinking that maybe it's not even all that important. Because we can't afford it, we just have a tendency sometimes to just go about making our decisions without having access. And later on down the road, often it comes back to bite us. But if you didn't have to worry about the cost of having access to an attorney, and it was convenient and simple to get an attorney on the phone in any area of law that you needed help with, within an hour or two from pushing a button, could that change the landscape of one of the oldest industries known to civilization? Look, LegalShield has done very well over the years. Right now, we receive over 40,000 phone calls a week from our membership base. And our evidence and research, everything suggests that there are more people now who need access to our service more than ever. And so the problem that potentially some people face is the ability of being able to find out who to even call. You know, a legal situation is not just about an emergency, and our services certainly can help out with that. You'll see that here in a few minutes, but it goes much deeper than that. It's also out of convenience, right? And if you think about that, when we've taken something that's been so difficult for people to access for so long and made it so affordable, well, now we've made it even more simple for somebody to get access to. So here's the LegalShield story. We've been in business since 1972. That's a snapshot there of our home office out in Ada, Oklahoma. It's a $26 million campus that's staffed with close to 1,000 folks that work there in order to be able to help us drive our business out in the field. The model is completely driven by using independent reps, primarily working from home from all over the country in many different capacities, to be able to share the message about this network of attorneys that are there in the corner of the families who need them to be able to give them help. And you want to think about the crowd sharing mentality. You get enough people to pay into something for a couple dollars into a service or a program on a monthly basis, and then that allows them to get access when they need it. So crowd sharing is certainly a way of the future. Well, what we do as independent representatives of LegalShield is we're the brand advocates. We're the people who go out into the marketplace, invite people to learn about what this business is about. And we have a system in place that will allow you to do that should you join us in that venture. And we'll get into how some of that works here in a few minutes. But The way that our company was founded was from this gentleman right here, Harlan Stone Cipher. He was our not just our founder, but the leader of our company and CEO for many years. And it happened from a car accident. And that's how, tragedy sometimes causes ideas and changes and shifts in the way we think about things and the way we take care of ourselves. And Mr. Sonecipher was not an entrepreneur. He was not a businessman. He was driving home from an appointment one evening, and a woman crossed over a double yellow line and hit him head on. Even though the accident wasn't his fault, she still wound up suing him. So he had auto insurance to take care of his wreck, and he had medical insurance to take care of his hospitalization, but he almost went broke to be able to defend himself in court, had to burn through basically his entire life savings. And he came up with the idea, why do we not have affordable access to the legal system in this country? Yeah, he was proved innocent, but nobody gave him his money back. So he started this model, and one person at a time recruited the attorneys, one person at a time found the representatives of the company, one person at a time, brick by brick, found the customer service team that led into that tremendous facility that I just showed on the previous slide. And before he knew it, after trial and error, he had built himself a publicly traded company that was valued over $500 million a year. Now, the reality is these services should have been a household name 20 years ago. That's how important they are, and that's how inexpensive they are, that the masses should have the service already. But the word of mouth marketing really, it can get to a certain point on its own. One person telling another person, and we've done well at that. And we'll never we'll never try and fix something that wasn't broken to begin with. And Mr. Sonecipher realized his dream a few years ago. We actually lost him. I was dealing with some health issues, and it was time for LegalShield to evolve and take the next step. We were fortunate enough to be purchased by a private equity firm in June of 2011 called MidOcean Partners. They have a history of taking well-performing companies and turning them into household names. And MidOcean Partners had gotten their hands on some independent market research study that suggested that LegalShield could touch as many as 50 million households with the correct brand awareness and marketing. They brought in a gentleman by the name of Rip Mason, who became the CEO of LegalShield back in 2011, and he installed a leadership team that's evolved over the years that began the process of bringing us into the public's eye. And we've been very fortunate enough to be able to enjoy that growth spurt. Again, I've been with the company for 7.5 years, and be able to watch this transition has been an amazing experience. And just from there, we've evolved even more. Mr. Mason now serves as the executive chairman of the board for the entire company and has turned the reins of the CEO over to Mr. Jeff Bell. And I encourage anybody that's doing any note-taking here to do some diligence on the background and history of Jeff Bell. And you can see some of these different logos and brands that are on the slide here. And these are all companies that Mr. Bell has been a part of and had an influence on their marketing strategies and had an influence on the growth of those companies. Worked underneath of Bill Gates, came up with the idea when he was at Chrysler to come up with a 4-door Jeep Wrangler. Figured out the idea of marketing Xbox through Netflix, and worked with Ford. So he has the background and resume of success, and he's done it through a mind that thinks forward into technological advances. So that kind of brings us up to where we are at now at the company. And since Mr. Bell has come aboard, especially here in the past 12 months, we've been averaging month after month growth, net gains to our membership base. The business is growing, and the timing couldn't be better for us. When I first got started with the company, I was in a little bit of a difficult spot. I had 2 small businesses that were struggling, not making the type of income that I needed to. Somebody walked in my door one day with a brochure for LegalShield and said, you could pick up the phone and call a lawyer as often as you need to for $20 a month without worrying about a bill. And at that point in my life, I needed an attorney. I knew how much it had cost me in the past to hire lawyers, and I also knew how much it cost me when I should have hired a lawyer, but I either couldn't afford it or didn't think it was a big enough issue, and it wound up causing a problem for me down the road that became expensive. So I understood the value of good advice. I just wondered why I had never heard of the service before. I was a little skeptical, but I decided to become a member and try it out before becoming a representative of the company. I was overly impressed with the services. I had an attorney call me back in 2 hours from my very first phone call that I made and was able to answer a few questions for me. When I dug a little bit further behind the curtain and started to see what the opportunity could offer for me financially, I became very intrigued. So what we're going to do is talk to you in context here of where we are going, both from a service standpoint and also the opportunity. So you saw the slides before that talked about the past. Well, here we talk about the future. We have now taken the power of our law firms and put the services right in the palm of the hand of the members who use our service. So we've always had a disruptive model by way of price. And now we've simplified the process even more than we have in the past. So our members can now, at the push of a button, be able to reach out and touch base with their provider attorneys 24 hours a day for emergency scenarios. As a matter of fact, our company was recently featured, not just on the cover, but throughout the entire Success from Home magazine about the power of our opportunity. It talks about how our services were simple to use. It talked about the need of how everybody needs to have access to what we offer at the cost that we offer it. And it talks about, more importantly than that, for you listening right now, on the unearthing an opportunity that is so prime right now for people to be able to take advantage of. And the reality is that sometimes it's better to be in the right place than have to worry about being the right time in the right place, than having to worry about being the smartest person in the room. So I'm going to run through with you here what happens when you have a LegalShield mobile app downloaded on your phone and subscribe to our services. And you have a series of buttons that you can take advantage of. And it all starts, our cornerstone benefit is consultation and advice for myself. If I was ever only to be able to have access to LegalShield for $20 a month, and the only thing I got to do was just ask advice and consultation, that was good enough for me. As a matter of fact, when I initially enrolled, I didn't know that it did all these other things. I was just excited to be able to have somebody that can give me and my family good, solid advice on large and small decisions that we potentially make throughout a calendar year. So I was in just based on that. But then I learned there was so much more than that. In addition to the advice and consultation, often the attorneys will want to review contracts and documents on your behalf, and it's included in the service. The ability to have a legal set of eyeballs on documents that you're potentially signing will affect you in a positive way versus you going at it you're alone and not really knowing what you're signing. Not just when you're buying a house or leasing a car, everything that you potentially put your name on, maybe it's a cell phone agreement or a cable television contract, our law firms will review them and try and make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into potentially. In addition to that, it's very conceivable that we're all going to run into some potential legal disputes at some point or another. That's life. Life happens to all of us. Well, after you've gone through the advice and consultation phase of our service, if our attorneys can get resolution for you, they believe they can get resolution for you, they'll step in and intervene in those situations by either making a threatening phone call on your behalf to whoever that third party is, or what we found to be much more effective is write some kind of a threatening letter on our law firm's letterhead, whether it's a business or an individual. Again, if we believe that's going to be able to get you resolution, this is not a benefit that we hope works. Prior to having this mobile app, this is a benefit that was in this legal plan for years. Now it's just become much more simple for somebody to get access to and use. And I'll just give you one real life testimony here, and we'll kind of move forward. But I have a friend of mine who purchased a big screen television from Costco a couple years back, spent $2,000 on it, brought it home. A day later, a part in the back of the television burned out, and before he knew it, he was back at Costco asking for help, and basically was told that they couldn't help him because they didn't carry the television anymore. He should try the manufacturer, which happened to be a small company called Sony, right? We all know who Sony is. Sony, he got routed to the complaint department when he called those guys up and basically was told, Costco don't make it because they don't carry it. There's nothing that they could really do. At that point, my friend had realized he had LegalShield, called into his provider law firm. They got involved immediately after checking proof of purchase by making a threatening letter up and having it sent out to Sony. But instead of it going to the complaint department, made its way into the legal department. They proceeded to call him back and with a much different tone. To the point where he was able to recover almost $1,700. So it wasn't a full win. They took some money off for depreciation, but he wasn't getting anywhere on his own. And that's the point. So maybe it's not the television for you, but it might be the contractor that came to your house and did a bad job, and they took payment from you and wouldn't give it back, or the insurance company that didn't pay a bill. We've all been in situations where we've been taken advantage of and treated unfairly before. Well, now in the palm of your hand, you have a resource and access to something that could be able to get those issues resolved, and making you feel comfortable that you've done everything that you could in regards to those situations. So taking it a step further, and the second button on the mobile app gives you the ability to deal with moving violations. There's a button that allows you, when you receive a ticket, that you can take a picture right on the app that uploads right to your provider law firm. Again, I was fortunate enough, I guess you can call it fortunate enough, to use this benefit just last month. I made an illegal left turn. It wound up turning into a 3-point ticket. And I didn't think that it was an illegal left turn, but the officer disagreed. And he wound up pulling away. As he was pulling away, I pulled out my app. I took a picture of the speeding ticket right before I even pulled away, and it was uploaded to my law firm. Shortly thereafter, an attorney from my provider law firm called me back, let me know about some of the discovery that they were going to be doing. Also told me best and worst case scenario, and be ready to see them in court. The day of court, my attorney showed up. She was there before I was. Went in, talked to the prosecutor, got me out of there before anybody else, cut right in line in front of everybody else who was waiting in line to speak to the prosecutor. Some of you that have been in municipal court before knows how that goes. But just being able to get myself up to the judge and out of there quickly was a big deal. But my 3-point ticket got settled down to 0 points, and all I had to do was pay an $80 court fine. You see, it didn't cost me anything extra for the attorney to be there for me that day. It didn't cost me anything extra to have them do the discovery work after the ticket was uploaded, and everything that the law firm had to do to make sure that I was taken care of in court. And so what I want you to know is, we're talking about these services here. This is a family subscription. Everybody in the family can download the mobile app and have access to these services. As a matter of fact, dependents up to age 26 are part of this program as well. One of the other things that we encourage our members to take advantage of is the button that can begin the process of allowing them to prepare their will. Look, 80% of the American adult population does not have these documents. The will, living will, and healthcare power of attorney are provided through our service for the member and member spouse. They are very important. If you don't want somebody else making your medical decisions for you in advance, you need to take care of the healthcare power of attorney. Maybe you have minor children without a will or directive in place. If the parents become deceased, children become wards of the state automatically. So being able to remove the barriers of finance to be able to prepare these documents saves time, money, and hassle, and peace of mind. You can see down there the check mark says $1,000 of value. And depending on the state that you live in, if you were to go and ask a really good, let's just say in the town that you live in, to do these same documents that we do complimentary for our members into the services built into this app, you could see the value is there pretty heavily. Now, in addition to that, we want to be able to give our members access to our member services. It's a button right on the phone, on the app on the phone, that can get them in touch with the team that works at our home office in case there's any billing issues, in case there's any feedback that they want to give us, or they don't understand how to use all the services that are included. Again, they can just press a separate button from their law firm to get connected into our corporate office, who's there ready to serve and answer any question that our members need. And one of the last buttons that's featured listed there is that red button. That's 24/7 emergency access. If our members are ever in an accident, arrested, questioned, detained, child services attempts to remove children from your home, you have the ability, with pressing that button, a few seconds later, be connected with an attorney that will give you the best possible advice available for that situation. In our Miranda rights, we have the right to remain silent, but we also have the right to an attorney. And I ask the question all the time, how many people do you know that can actually access that right? In our industry, we say, if you don't know what your rights are, or you can't access them, they don't exist, right? So we are leveling the playing field and giving everybody affordable access to the legal system. I just want you to think of the times that we are in right now and how important these services are for folks that need it. In addition to that, we talked briefly before about the problem of identity theft in this country. Well, our solution is the best solution at the most affordable cost. We have a partnership with a company called Kroll Advisory. They are the largest risk management and private investigating firm in the world, and they empower our members with resources to be able to provide all kinds of services by way of consultation and restoration. And we'll talk about that in a second here. But it's important to know that we've made this simplified as well by creating our IDShield app. Our members can now see a real-time quarterly credit score tracker. They have 24/7 access to a private investigator from Kroll should they have a situation that needs to be talked with somebody right away, or they're worried about a particular scenario. So identity theft wreaks havoc on people's lives. The majority of services out there are merely monitoring programs, maybe that come with some sort of fraud protection. That's all the easy stuff, right? And we have so much available to our members by way of personal monitoring. We monitor an individual's entire public persona, not just their credit profile, which, by the way, is only 18% of all identity theft victims are financial related. So you certainly need something that's monitoring way more than just the credit profile. But the most important part of our program, if our members are breached in any area of identity theft, they're assigned a licensed investigator from Kroll that does the restoration work. That's getting the information restored back to where it was before the theft occurred. And we even put a $5 million service guarantee behind that. Questions come up, well, why would my minors need a service like this? Look, underage identity theft is one of the fastest growing segments of identity theft. And folks aren't finding out they have an issue until they turn 18 years old. Social Security numbers are being stolen at birth, and all kinds of havoc is being wreaked upon them, unbeknownst to them. Okay, so the value is certainly there. And look, you know, we all have smoke detectors in our homes. That's self-evident, right? We don't question that. We live in a world now where we are really probably more than 200 times more likely to have our identity stolen than have our houses burned down on us. And so it's not just a question of it being self-evident. Identity theft protection is self-evident these days, but it's just a question of making sure that you have the best service available. So again, it's a whole different space to have the best service available at the best price, and that puts us in a good position from a marketing standpoint. So as we transition here to talk about the opportunity and the compensation, we want to say this: our services matter. And when we talked before about characteristic number 3 being a noble cause behind what the company does, that's why we think we stand out there in a big way. And the opportunity might not be for you, but we would encourage you to take advantage of the services, and we would encourage you to share them with others. As a matter of fact, from a marketing standpoint, one of the reasons that I got involved with this opportunity, and there was some things that I needed to check on. I needed to make sure that the compensation worked. I was very intrigued about the idea of being able to build this business around other things that I was doing and not have to walk away from my other businesses all at once. But one of the most important parts that mattered to me was I remember telling myself I would tell others about this service whether I was getting paid for it or not. And you see, that's the day and age that we're in now. Sometimes somebody will look at information on LegalShield and they'll ask the questions, well, why is it that we haven't seen television commercials? And you know, it's a valid question. You know, we're a boots on the ground type company. You know, we've built our business from meetings, conference calls, trainings, and being out there educating the public. And when you think of television commercials, I want you to tell me the truth. And most products and services that are thrown in our face through television commercials are usually overhyped. You know, take the local fast food hamburger on the television ad. It always looks so great, right? But if you actually go in there and purchase the hamburger, it looks a lot different than it did on the TV commercial. And so people have caught on to that, and the times have changed. As a matter of fact, in the exponential times we live in now, TV commercials just don't cut it anymore. That's not the space that we're in now. The reality is there are more people who watch video on their smartphones than actually watch television commercials. You know, it's important to note that, because when you think about where we're going, when you are home watching television, if you do that, if you're not watching Netflix or something else, when a commercial comes on, most likely what are you doing? You're picking up your phone and you're looking at your phone, right? So we know these trends, and we know that if we're going to be successful, we've got to be on the phone. We've got to be where people are going to look at LegalShield and see what we're doing. And so let's look a little bit further, right? Now, these are all companies that are having an extremely successful run, growth. Many of us use these applications and services, whether it's Facebook or Snapchat, Instagram, all these companies here. Now they all have something in common, that they're all hyper successful, right? But let's ask a question. Did you see a television commercial when you downloaded and started your Twitter account, or when you started your Facebook page? Now, I started to see Uber commercials, but really the reality is that most of us were using Uber long before they ever had a television commercial. Instagram, Spotify. How did you hear about these great platforms? Somebody told you about them, right? And so let's take it a step further. I'm going to focus right on the two in the middle of the page, Facebook. If Facebook was, if Facebook were a country right now, it'd be the second largest country in the world. It's important to note, Facebook had a run for themselves where it took them about 10 years to get pretty close to leveling off and getting that stable growth, but not that hyper growth that they had. 10 years to gain the primary market share that they had. And Zuckerberg relied on the folks, the users of that platform, to be able to like it enough to go out and tell other people about and share the Facebook message. Well, the company listed right above Facebook there, the icon for Uber, Uber was able to basically accomplish what Facebook did in 10 years in just about 20% of the time, in about 2 years. And how did that happen? Right? It wasn't done through the television commercials. What Uber did was expanded off of that idea and said, you know what? Not only are people going to like our platform because it meets the criteria of being simple, disruptive, and made it fun and everything else, but in addition to that, we are actually going to incentivize people to share the message. So if you share your Uber code with somebody else and they become a user of Uber for the first time, they now receive a free ride credit from Uber. And at the same time, when they do that, and in turn, we receive that credit, I would receive that same credit. What a brilliant marketing concept, right? Because it's something that we would have told people about anyway. And you just put it on steroids by throwing incentives into the pot. Well, what Jeff Bell and the brilliant minds of LegalShield have decided to do is they've not only changed that to not just giving credits, but to paying cash money for that same type of sharing mentality, but they've also given us the ability to have ownership interest in a book of business that we create through the same process. And I hope everybody gets that, because as we move forward here, that's where we're going with LegalShield and IDShield. And look, I'm not going to knock any of these other platforms and services that are out there, but the reality is this: there is nothing more important right now in our country than people being able to have affordable access to help them navigate through the murky waters that are about. In addition to that, the sister brand of IDShield is just so important for people to have. It's not just about you protecting your private information with a firewall. It's everybody else who has access to our information. And we have real solutions and a real business here. So we know that you've got some good friends, and we anticipate that you can share this information with them the same way that you would with some of those other platforms that we took a look at. And here's what can happen when you get involved. Now, if you are just going to be a user of the mobile apps, we still encourage you, please invite other people to download and subscribe to our services. We know it'll benefit them, and you'll be doing right by that person. Be a user of the services yourself. But for those of you that kind of see this and where the business can make sense to you financially, let's look a little bit closer at our model. To be vested on a book of business that can pay you with LegalShield, you need to create an account, which costs $99. That will allow all the compensation get tracked to you that after you start sharing the information out in the field. So you create an account one time for $99. Once that is done, you're now in position to be able to start sharing the message immediately and getting paid immediately. We would call you an associate. When you come aboard as an associate with our company, each time you can get somebody to download and subscribe to the apps. If you get them to subscribe to LegalShield as well as IDShield, you'll receive an immediate credit of $100, cash to pay direct deposit into your bank account. If they only subscribe to one of the mobile apps, then obviously the compensation is half. But we're paying you 2.5 times what it costs the customer to get access to a service that they didn't know about yet until you shared it with them, and before you came along, and it's very affordable to them, right? So we have a marketing plan in place that will teach you how to share this information. If you're able to do it 6 times in your first 20 days, which if you follow our process, the likelihood of that happening is very strong, will actually give you a raise to what we call the senior associate position. And that means on the 7th person who downloads and subscribes, you'll now be paid $120 for the same work that it took you before when you're only being paid $100. We can even give you an opportunity to be able to expand upon your business, and instead of doing 6 folks to subscribe before getting that promotion, you can do it with half that amount, just 3. And that's because one of those folks will probably raise their hand and decide to say, you know what, I'd like to open up an account and share this with other people too, so I can be compensated, right? So you get that when somebody else gets involved, you now have leverage because they can allow, their production can now allow you to get yourself promoted more quickly than it would if you would have just done it on your own. In addition to that, you start to set yourself up to potentially earn overrides. Now, as you progress through the compensation plan, the more people you get to download and subscribe to the services, within a short period of time, you can have yourself at what we call our manager position. At that point, most likely, there's going to be a handful of people that have raised their hand and joined the LegalShield revolution with us. And when that happens, let's take a look at an example of what override compensation could potentially look like. I've now decided that what you're doing makes sense. You're making $140 by sharing these services that people need and can afford and didn't know about yet till you came along. I said, I want to get behind that. That makes sense. I would like to make some extra money for myself, and it's a great cause. And it's simple. So I'm ready. Teach me what to do. So you show me exactly what it is that you did, and now I am out introducing the service, being paid my $100 each time. My override, or your override for that now, is the difference between your level in the compensation plan and mine, which is $40. Okay? So it's what we call a differential compensation plan. Now look, production matters. Each time folks subscribe to these services, by the time you reach 100 total downloads and subscriptions, you're now going to be paid $190 for each of those combination services there when somebody enrolls. That 100 does not need to come from you. As a matter of fact, we don't prefer that it comes just from you. We prefer it to be a combination of what you do and also other folks who create an account and follow and duplicate the same process. So you're now using the leverage of everybody involved to move you further up the compensation package. And if you notice now, if you start to develop other folks that reach the manager level, you're still being paid overrides, but now the difference is not at $40, it's $50. So let's take a look at what this could actually mean for you financially. Let's say that you have a team of folks and that have all reached the manager level, 12 people, and everybody gets really excited one month and goes out and does just one new membership of somebody who becomes a LegalShield and IDShield subscriber. Well, now you've just put $600 worth of part-time income into your pocket, almost by accident, right? Because this is extremely part-time. Now, that could, if you take it a step further, that could look a little bit better if everybody was to go out and do one per week. You see, now it's you, this is actually just overrides of 12 people that have gone out and done one per week. And if you look, if you went out and did your own one per week, you add 190 times 4, you now have a part-time income that could touch as much as $3,000 a month or more. It can obviously grow exponentially away from you. The value of that, though, is you're getting closer to our monthly qualification of 50 cumulative memberships a month. When you hit that position, we now call you an executive director, and it's a bonus level that needs to be maintained every month in order for you to receive this kind of income. So I'm fortunate enough to be qualified at the executive director position and have been for some time. Every single time that I can get somebody to get enrolled into these services and spend $40, and they do pay a $10 enrollment fee. The next day, LegalShield direct deposits $280 into my bank account. Because of this business model, the organization I've been fortunate enough to build, the leaders that I've learned from, and the income that comes in, I was able to get away from those other businesses after about 2 years and focus for the past 5 years, 100% of my efforts on this business model. And it's the time element is just as important as the finances. I have a 6-year-old son who has never known either my wife or I to work outside of the home, because this is a home that allows us to be here. So the time flexibility, again, is just as important as now with the technology advancements that the company has made. We just anticipate things only getting better from here. So anyway, if you've made the executive director position, you're potentially looking at overrides of $140. You see, at this point, it becomes way more than just a part-time business. And I'll tell you why here in a second, why that is a big deal. But at 1 per week, if you have 12 managers doing 1 per week, you now have an override income of $6,720. That's before you've done any new memberships you've gotten it yourself. Now, I want you to know this. There are folks in our company who have literally made millions of dollars over the years by being a LegalShield representative, and they've started their business word of mouth, fees and DVDs, but for those people has been not just luck. It's been a commitment than they ever have before. And at some point or another, if you had those same 12 people that got that good and were that dedicated, and they were out doing 12, if you had 12 per day, potentially override income of over $50,000 a month. And I'm not trying to sell you on a millionaire's dream. I promise that. But I want you to know, and I tried to kind of laid the groundwork there when I just mentioned the folks that have been in our business. We have a track to run on that can allow you to get there. You see, we're not talking about, potentially if this all worked, here's what could happen. If you got behind the curtain and you will do your due diligence, you'll see that there are examples of this all over our company. So it's now just time for the general public to actually see this, and we're taking advantage of the opportunity. Now, share with you is probably the best part. And as you see some of these faces pop up here on the screen, some are living, some are dead, but what do they all have in common? Residual income. You see, everything that you've seen up to this point is all first-year compensation. But these memberships, these subscribers of our services stay on the books for years and years and years. And starting on the 13th month, every single time that a member pays their subscription, a portion of that money is breaking off and paid to us residually. Got it? So we're paid the first year up front and everything that you just saw. And then now we have that we're vested lifetime on, which was part of you creating an account and spending that $99. Let's take just a very simple look at how it looks. There's our friend Michael Jordan. Most of us are familiar with his brand, his Air Jordan sneakers. Every time an Air Jordan gets sold, Michael Jordan gets paid. Right? 2 Air Jordan gets sold, he gets paid twice. 3, he gets paid 3 times. And this just adds up. Now, Michael Jordan is not out there selling the Air Jordans. He's actually probably playing golf or something else that he enjoys doing with his time. But let's take a look at what it could look like for the LegalShield associate. That's us over there with the smiley face there. Okay, so we go out and we help somebody download and subscribe to our membership. We get paid. Do it twice, we can get paid twice. Okay, we have a team of people doing it, and we get paid. And this winds up adding up and pays us for the life of the membership, not the life of the work that it took to acquire the customer. And residual income is something I never had in my prior businesses. I watch my residual income come in on a daily basis now. it's the greatest form of security that we've ever had. So we provide enough upfront compensation for this to make sense. You can make money just by going out and sharing the service. You can create significant leverage by having other folks get involved in this business model and teaching them to duplicate what we're doing and helping us share this message out in the field. And then the third is the residual income that comes in from an existing book of business. You're setting yourself up for long-term passive income that can come in when you maybe no longer want to build the business anymore. Okay, and that's important. If you leave your job now, most likely your income stops. But here we're invested lifetime on this business that we create with LegalShield. Now, there are bonuses and incentives. We have a car bonus program. We have annual vacations and all that fun stuff. We're not going to get too much into that here today, but there's what happens when you start to make it out to the vacation. You work hard for a little while, you go on a free vacation and relax. I would take my suit off, but this guy decided to just hang out there on the hammock. So let's recap here before we wrap up. Here's what we talked about today. We talked about the future of business. Future of business has to be simple, disruptive, noble, and not easily duplicated. We showed you a snapshot of what some trends are, both in the past and the future of different industries, right? We looked at existing platforms and how they've been able to use trends to be able to predict their marketing and how they were able to gain favorable client sizes and growth and things of that nature. And then we tied it all together into a compensation package that is going to allow for people to participate in this LegalShield opportunity. And then we really just built everything around keeping our services in front of people. Now, look, the world's largest taxi company owns no vehicles. That's Uber. The largest accommodation provider owns no real estate. Welcome to Airbnb. Facebook, the most popular media provider, creates no content. And the most valuable photo company sells no cameras. That's Instagram. Netflix, the fastest growing television network, lays no cables. Amazon, the most valuable retailer, but has no industry and then inventory. And then last but not least, drum roll, LegalShield, the fastest growing legal services provider, owns no law firms. You see, these companies all have some things that are very similar, even though the industries are very different. And we hope that you caught that. So what we're going to ask you to do, by the way, we just finished out by a simple phrase here. This just makes sense. And so that's what I said to myself. And as this continues to evolve, we're only going to get better. I'll leave you with just a couple of important things to think about. In the exponential times that we live in right now, there are 2 times as daily text messages that are sent out as there are planet inhabitants. I already told you about Facebook being, if it was a country, be the second largest country in the world. But here's something that's really important to understand. Up until the year 1900, human knowledge only doubled once every 100 years. By 1945, we started doubling that rate every 25 years. Just 2 years ago in 2014, now every 2 weeks, human knowledge is doubling. Listen, gang, by year 2020, it will double every 13 hours. We have to pay attention to trends like this. The U.S. Department of Labor tells us that grade school students will hold between 15 and 18 jobs before they're 35 years old. 65% of those jobs don't even exist yet. And for our existing workforce here in America, you might fit into this category. 1 in 5 Americans are on their current job less than a year. 1 in 2 Americans are on a job less than 5 years. And change is going on so rapidly. We have to harness this and figure out what it all means. Forbes magazine had an article recently written that talked about the prolific rise of 1099 tax filers. We're basically entrepreneurs, people that have decided to take their future into their own hands, no longer relying on either the government or corporate America to be able to provide for their family's prosperity and their future. So being an entrepreneur can be hard. It can be risky. Being able to partner with a company that allows you not have to worry about building the foundation yourself, and you create an account for $100 and you get to represent the brands of LegalShield and IDShield, 2 40-year-old companies that have systems in place that allow you to succeed. That's a big deal. Most entrepreneurs step out on their own. They come up with an idea and they potentially have it come crashing down upon them. So in the year of 2001, there were just a few million people in this country who were bold enough to try and become an entrepreneur and go out and file for 1099, which basically said that they were going into the world of being self-employed and creating a business. Many of those people didn't have a brand to be a part of. They were their own brand, a mom and pop type entity. Um, in the year 2015, just a year ago, that number has risen to 25 million people who have seen the writing on the wall. See, LegalShield, we actually hold the key to this change. And we have an opportunity here to be able to position ourselves to ride a wave of momentum. As I told you, the MidOcean Partners, the parent company, they are chasing 40 to 50 million families. Currently, right now, we have about 4 million users. That only makes up about 1.5 million families that have access to these services. There's a tremendous opportunity here, and you can either be a part of this by riding a wave of momentum, or we could bury our head in our sand and pretend like none of this that I just talked about is going on, and potentially have a huge tsunami come crashing down on us instead. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is get back with the person that invited you to review this material here. Let them know what your thoughts are. Do your due diligence, get your questions answered. They have some of the brightest folks in the industry that are out there now sharing this message. And we look forward to learning a little bit more about what some of your goals are. So again, appreciate you hopping on for this presentation, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day or evening. Thank you.